Mayor? There you go.
I'll get one. I'll print it out later.
Ooh, yeah. Looks like
Yeah.
We're getting homework.
plenty.
Anybody can work.
Yeah,
About to
exactly.
enter you for so many free lunches.
That's right. That's right. One free ride per customer.
Good.
For November 13th, 4 p.m. Let's go ahead and start with our first agenda item, which is a presentation and discussion regarding ambulance service in the city of Norman. And I'd like to recognize Kyle Hurley to present.
Okay, all right. Thank you for having me here. Never gotten to present in front of you this group for things. So when people think of public safety, usually they're thinking about police and fire, which is, you know, the municipality that you all oversee. But MSTAT is a partner or is a department of Norman Regional Health System. We have been the sole EMS provider in the city of Norman since September of 1995. Prior to that, it was with Norman PD EMS from 1978 until 1995. So it was a municipality, and I don't know what happened. That was before my time, but the city parted ways with EMS, and it was acquired by the health system. Prior to 78, I think it was through like a hearse or something like that, so I can't get that far back. But anyway, so I was asked to present just a general overview of, like, you know, what we do, our response time, some of the metrics that, you know, we follow. And I can talk about, you know, our relationship with the health system, since, you know, I work for Norman Regional, so we're a department of the health system. So interrupt me at any point and I will answer things. So just to start the overview, we have in our fleet, we have 21 ambulances. Are they all deployed at once? No. And we'll get into the staffing here in just a little bit. We do have 6 support vehicles, so those would be like supervisor vehicles. And then as far as our staffing goes, we have 5 ambulances that we staff 24 hours a day. So, and you know, we work very closely with the Norman Fire Department. So if you think about the 9 stations, we have 3 here in Norman, but they have multiple ambulances per station. But then we will ramp up during our volume as it peaks up, like during the day. So at 3 in the morning, we're not doing a whole bunch. At 3 p.m., we're doing everything. So past 2 of my trucks on the way here. And then on other days, such as, and I'll talk about like OU football coverage and stuff, you know, then we ramp up, you know, even more, you know, from there. So these are the locations of the 3 ambulance stations in Norman, and then we also have a station of Moore, as some of you may know. We also have a contract with the city of Moore. Chief Marler is here representing Moore. And so we've had that contract since 2015. We also respond to the city of Goldsby. So we have a contract with them for the very northeastern portion. So we do go into McLean County as well. Now, as compared to Norman Fire, which is limited to the city limits, we also go into unincorporated Cleveland County as well. So we will go all the way to Pot County line. We will go north into some unincorporated areas where we will have either more fire, or we will have most likely Oklahoma City Fire respond as well.
Okay, I have a question for you. So all those ambulances are dispatched from those 4 locations, no matter where they go in Cleveland County?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
Goldsby?
Yes, that's correct. So, or wherever they're located at the time, they may be, you know, in transit for things, but yeah. So, but those are the only 4 stations that we have.
And it is Norman PD dispatch.
Yes. So we have 2 different dispatches. So in Norman, we use City of Norman dispatch, and Moore, we use the City of Moore dispatch. So, and our radios, you know, go back and forth between the 2. But yes, those are our 2 dispatch centers. So we do not dispatch ourselves. I do not want to get into the dispatch business. We are happy to pay you all money to do that for us. So we push money back into the city of Norman. So just so you know. Okay, so those are the locations of things. So I'm just going to go into, because since this is my first time presenting, you know, everything about what we do, I'm just going to go a little bit into the licensures here. So we have 3 basic licensures. We have an EMT, emergency medical technician. So that takes about a semester of college, and what they can do is exactly as the name implies. They can do basic functions in there. So they can do assessments. They can help out with certain trauma bandaging and things. They have very limited knowledge when it comes to, say, like anatomy and physiology. They're not really giving a lot of medications. Then if they do another semester, they can get what's referred to as an EMT advanced, and they can do a few more things. They can do advanced airway management, which would be putting a breathing tube into someone. If they're not breathing, they can start IVs, intravenous lines on patients. They can give some fluids. And then the highest licensure that we have is a paramedic. And so that is about anywhere between 18 months to 2 years of schooling. If you're equated to something on the hospital side, it'd be like a registered nurse, but for the pre-hospital setting, and they can basically do anything. We all work under the license of the medical director. So Dr. Trey Kramer is our medical director right now. And so he writes the protocols that we can do. So if you're used to watching, I almost included the slide in here to see if anybody caught stuff, but like you're used to watching Emergency back in the day with Johnny and Roy. I mean, they had to call in for every single little thing. Can I do this? Can I do that? It's so much more efficient now to do the training ahead of time so that people understand that they can operate under certain protocols. So like SOPs, in a sense. That way we don't have to call in the event of an emergency. We only have to call for just like a few things. So that just speeds up patient care and gets us, where we need to go faster. But the paramedics can do, basically anything. IV medications, airway management, anything that would be required short of surgery in the field. We can basically do that, which that does happen sometimes if we call surgeons out, but that's pretty rare. And then the other one we have, and it's not really like a licensure, but it's just more advanced training, is that we also have a critical care paramedic. So that's additional training outside of paramedic school. And basically this doesn't apply to the pre-hospital setting as it does between interfacility transports. So for example, if we have a patient who is brought to an emergency department and they need a level 1 trauma center, Norman Regional is a level 3 trauma center, which means they can do a lot of trauma, but they can't do all trauma. So the level 1 trauma center in Oklahoma City is at OU. There's a level 2 trauma center at Baptist. We also have trauma centers up in Tulsa. But what we would do is, let's say the patient is connected to a whole bunch of ventilators and medication IVs and blood tubing and everything. That's going to require specialized training. And that's a little bit more beyond paramedic school, so they get their critical care paramedic. So pretty much any patient type that needs to go between Norman and another facility, we can transport those patients. Now, if it's going to be farther away and time is critical, then that's where we would recommend to the hospital that that person needs to go by air. So if it's an emergent and they need to get up to Tulsa for some reason, then we're going to say, hey, you know what, we need to call for a helicopter. Okay. All right, and then we also have some other specialty training within here. So we also do disaster response. So we have a disaster medical response team. And they have specialized training, and basically they get employed anytime that we're having anything that is going to have the potential for being a mass casualty incident or an MCI. All the medics are trained in ICS, and then we would deploy them, as necessary. So we will put a lot of them on call during storm season, which, as you all know, starts January 1st and ends December 31st. But anytime that we have something to where we feel like there is a credible, significant event, then we will put the DMRT team, on standby. Hazardous materials, we do still do a little bit of the training for that. We leave the majority of that to the fire services because they train more. They're the experts in that. But we also do have medics who are hazmat operations and tech level trained. I'm tech level trained. But the medics mostly focus on the medical side of things. So whereas the firefighters are going to be looking at how can we plug this, how can we dam and dike, how can we mitigate this hazardous response, the medics are going to be thinking, okay, what are all the different chemicals that are being used or people being exposed to in this, and what do we have that we can counteract things? Okay. So critical care I already mentioned, and then we also have our SWAT medic team. So that works closely with the Norman Police Department and the OU Police Department, Cleveland County Sheriff's, Moore Police Department. So these are paramedics and EMTs who train alongside the SWAT officers. They do not carry weapons. Their whole purpose is to, 1, be there for the officers, and 2, also be there for any victims they may encounter. They do drills all the time. When we opened up our Norman Regional 9 facility a few years ago at Southeast 12th and Highway 9, we did, before it even opened up, we did some drills in there. So, and David, our council member, I think, one of your teams, was down there, for that. And so it was really good to go through that. We did an armed intruder drill. And so we got a lot of really good information, out of that. So, and so anytime that there's a warrant service being served, you will have our SWAT medics, there for the officers. Okay, and then the other one on here, Bike medic, you can see Justin up here attending to someone at an OU football game. This is something that is actually somewhat unique to us. So we've traveled, for a lot of you all who've traveled around to other sports venues and seeing, like what sort of medical response they have. Most places are kind of like, think of it similar to what you'll see up at Paycom if you're going to a Thunder game. They have some first aid rooms in there, and it's like if there's a problem, then you have to go find them, or you have to flag somebody down. Whereas for us, we have bike paramedics who are all over the stadium, and we have found that is the quickest, fastest way to get to patients. And they have in their satchel bags, they will have they're like a little mini ambulance. They can pretty much do the majority of things that we can do in the back of the ambulance, but we're doing it in section 19, row 20. So it just depends on what it is. And we also have a Gomer Jones facility. I'll just kind of like move into our special event responses. So for OU football games, just like Norman PD and everybody else, we ramp up as well. And just because things are happening at the stadium doesn't mean that there's not going to be a wreck at Highway 9 and 84th. Okay, so the city operations, still continue with things, but we ramp up quite a bit. As you can see on the picture on the right, that is our Gomer Jones. So if you're not familiar with the stadium, just inside gate 6, below section 19, is the Gomer Jones Medical Facility. And so Norman Regional has the contract for providing emergency services at no cost to anyone who's inside the stadium. And so we go inside the stadium, outside the stadium. We also have crews down on the field and also kind of strategically placed throughout the stands so that if something happens anywhere, our dispatch center, which is obviously located over the ECOC, during that time will let us know where patients are. So, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm curious, do you have an average for how many events that you see at one of these special events, like a game or even Norman Music Fest?
Sure. So for an OU football game, earlier in the season, we will run anywhere between, I would say 60 to 100 patient contacts. And that's usually heat related earlier in the season. And then by the time we get to the last game, that's probably going to drop below 30. So, and then some of those will go to the Gomer Jones facility and some of those will not. So one of the nice things about having paramedics on bikes in the field is that if we see somebody we go, hey, you know what, Councilmember Hinkle looks like he's maybe just had a little too many to drink, we can probably get him over to Gomer Jones, and we can get an IV in you, and we'll get you hooked up so you can get back over to Section 104 and cheer on the Sooners. So, however, if we go, you know what, they're having a heart attack, that doesn't need to go to Gomer Jones. That needs to go to an emergency department and to a cardiac cath lab. So we can see that there in the field, and then we will take them from wherever that person is right there, and we will take them straight to an ambulance, and then we'll transport them out.
Councilmember No Fire?
I was just curious on what is the highest level of care that you can provide at the Gomer Jones?
The highest, so we have an emergency room physician there, and we also have emergency room nurses there. But it's to answer your question, as far as like the level of care, they're able to start IVs and give some fluids, and they can give certain medications. They do have a defibrillator there. We have an ambulance on standby in there, so we can provide all the normal care that we can for an ambulance. But things that like a physician would not be able to do in there is if somebody had an impaled object, like in their chest and stuff. They're not able to, crack open their chest and do that sort of stuff. So, but we recognize that stuff pretty early. In other words, if we see something that's like, ooh, we can't do this here, we're going to call for a street truck, and we're getting them transported out pretty fast. Okay. Yeah. Question? Okay. But you can see a list on here of the other events that we do. But back to the question about like Norman Music Fest, we will see Norman Music Fest is pretty chill on our side. The things that we will see are usually intox related, and usually they're going through the police department. So if they go through us, they've got to be pretty intoxicated. But we will have probably a dozen or less calls, and the majority of those do not get transported. So yeah.
I would expect more, but that's actually
Good news.
yeah.
But if I were to go to the next line down to the meat of the fair, we are going to see more things there, because I would say that we have a different patient demographic that we will see out there. People in a variety of different health conditions, And depending on how warm and hot it is and how much people have had to drink at that event, and depending on how much sword play they're doing, we may see some traumatic events as well. So, but typically medieval fair it's less trauma, it's more medical. I mean, we'll see a lot of, sick people who want to go out there. I mean, it's a very neat event, but we will, encounter that, and we will have bike medics out there. It's just faster to get to the patient. That's what we've determined. Okay. And then we have a really good working relationship with the athletic departments, not only for OU, but for Norman, the city of Moore, also Little Axe. So on any given Friday night, now that every high school has its own stadium, congratulations to all of them. Now, the challenge for us is that now we are doing standbys for every single one of those. So if all of them had a home game on the exact same night, we would have to cover 6 stadiums. So 3 in Moore, 2 in Norman, and 1 in Little Axe. So that doesn't happen very often, and we're happy to do it, and we've got a good working relationship with all those different areas. Okay, getting into some other things on here. So one of the things that I want you all to know is that we do surveys. So for every patient that we transport, that we take to one of our emergency departments, they will get a survey. And that's the same thing, and that is one of the benefits of being a hospital-based EMS service, is that Norman Regional sends out surveys to everyone who is seen in the emergency department, comes in for outpatient lab or whatever the case may be. And they will get this, like a day or two later, and it's basically, how was your ride? How did we do for things? And I'm really pleased to present that, we have really good survey data on this, so very few critiques on things. So we're also with the person a very short amount of time. I'll tell people, I'm like, you can be nice for 30 minutes. Okay, you should be nice all the time, but you can definitely be nice for 30 minutes. And so, but we get this, I report this out in our quality committee. So we also have, just so you know, we have a quality committee that meets on the 3rd Thursday of every month, and we have representation, 3 areas from the city of Norman, from Norman Dispatch, Norman PD, and Norman Fire. So we also have more Fire and more PD and more Dispatch, and basically all kind of our key partners, and then some partners within the health system. So, and we report out on all this data, and so we will show the survey scores, good or not so good, and then individual comments for things. But we do get feedback from our patients, how can we do better? So that's part of it.
You kind of run through the numbers just a little bit so I can.
Oh, yes, of course. So what we're looking at on here is, so this is referred to as a net promoter score. And so we're also tied to the emergency department survey scores, which means that they're not just getting an EMS survey, they're getting an emergency department with a few EMS questions. And the questions are these right here. That 0 to 10 really relates to the emergency department visit. So on every single Norman Regional survey, they will say on a scale of 0 to 10, how was your visit? And so, and then moving down here, a 9 or a 10 is considered a promoter score. That's the green. The amber there in the middle is a passive score. That's a 7 or 8, and anywhere from 0 to 6, that is a detractor score. In order to get the net promoter score over here, that is, you take the promoters and subtract the detractors, and that gives you this net promoter score. And then you can also benchmark that amongst, like other facilities. So there isn't as much EMS data in here because everyone kind of does their own thing. So like other agencies will probably just do kind of like a homegrown thing where there's somebody who works there who will make phone calls. We use a national survey group here, which is very nice, but they can benchmark us. But all the scores that we see on here, like 87 through 72, these are all, and I know the scale, is going to be new for everybody, but I mean, these are all really good. I mean, I like seeing green graphs on here because this tells us that, compared to other EMS agencies that use NRC, we're doing really well.
So it's like a Likert scale, and then
Yes.
The gap, I guess, is between your benchmark and your score.
Yes.
And the gap is similar, and who does similar? Who picks the similar?
NRC does.
Okay.
Yes. All right, moving on to our call volume. So you can take a look at from 2015 until, and this is by calendar year, and I have it broken out by town. Norman tends to grow the volume just a little bit, and I will, in the next slide, I'll show you how our volume breaks out because we do more than just 911 calls. And then you can see how that breaks out between Norman and also the city of Moore. I do want to point out, if you're able to see it here, from 2023 calendar year to 2024, how it just dropped a little bit, kind of, a little bit flat. Part of that had to do is that we lost 2,800 calls when we closed the Porter campus because we were moving people between campuses, between Porter and Helplex. A patient walks into Porter Emergency Department and they needed, X, Y, and Z. Well, that wasn't offered at the Porter campus, so now we have to transport that patient to the Helplex, and then vice versa if somebody walked into the Helplex. So that was about 2,800 calls per year, but we've also seen an increase in the number of transports that we do out at Norman Regional 9, because as the volume is no longer at the Porter campus, it's people still need to come into the emergency department. Where do they go? The majority of them go to the Norman Regional Hospital, what we used to call the Helplex, and then the others go to Norman Regional 9. As more people go to Norman 9, there's more people who need to be admitted. And since it is not a hospital, it's a freestanding emergency department, there are no inpatient beds there. And then what we do is they will call us and they will say, hey, this person needs to be admitted, and we will take them at no charge. So anytime that we move a patient, and so this would be I know this is a good constituent question that gets asked is, do we charge patients that we move between our facilities? And the answer is no. So if we pick you up in the field and take you to the emergency department, yes, that is a bill. If you're at the emergency department and they say, hey, we need to send you to OU for something we can't do, that's a bill. But anytime that we move people between our facilities, there is no charge for that.
Yeah. On this slide here, you mentioned about going south outside the city limits. And so is that a third category?
So that I lump Goldsby into, I lump any of those sort of things into like the Norman numbers and stuff. So there's a little bit of Goldsby. We run about it's about 300-ish calls in a year, and anything that is inside Cleveland County that is just outside of Norman city limits, that's probably 10 calls a year, if anything. So I would say it's very minimal. Where we have seen a lot of growth is we have seen a lot of growth in the city of Moore. As Chief Marlowe, I'm sure, could confirm, in Moore, just the 911 volume continues to grow at a higher percentage rate than we see in Norman. So Moore is interesting in that they will do nothing and then they will do everything like that. So for example, we have 2 ambulances up there 24 hours a day, and then we have a 3rd ambulance that shows up, kind of like a mid-shift during our peak periods. But we had like Tuesday morning between 6:45 and 7:30 in the morning, we had 5 calls drop, during that time. So that's unusual and stuff, but we're able to backfill that with ambulances from Norman. And if we're not able to, then we do what's called mutual aid, and we call for IMSA, or we call for somebody else to help us out. Here's how our calls break out as far as what different types. This is for the month of August, but this is pretty representative of the entire year. So emergency response, the 74% on here, this is going to be for 911 calls that we were doing. This 14% up here, this is going to be emergency interfacility transfers. And when we say emergency, it can be code 1, which is no lights or sirens, or it could be code 3, which is lights and sirens. But that is moving people between our facilities. We also have this other routine medical transport, that's at 10%. Those are patients at the hospital who need to be discharged and have to go by ambulance. So if we're taking somebody back to a nursing home or to a long-term acute care facility or back to a residence, and they have to go by ambulance, and that's kind of what falls into there. And then we have some other things in here as well. As far as our disposition, and what this means is that as we respond to a call, what sort of transport mode do we have from that? The majority of the call transports that we have, the 64%, is non-emergent. So we try not to use our lights and sirens if we can avoid it. And we actually have a study going on right now to see if we can use less lights and sirens on the way to a call. So right now, if you call 911, you got a stub tow, ambulance, lights and sirens. So there are other systems that are trying to decrease the amount of lights and sirens, but that's the project that we will work on with the fire department and dispatch, to have, better criteria for that. So because what may come out as, just sounds like a simple fever, now this person is in septic shock and they're about to go into cardiac arrest. So that's why having a good, robust, dispatch, which our dispatch is fantastic, they screen things very well, but it's also, they can only base things off the information that they are given, and nothing is going to replace doing on the scene, hands-on assessment, by a licensed professional.
Why would you want to increase the number of no lights and sirens?
I don't. No, I would want to decrease it.
No, let me restate that.
Oh.
Why would you want to decrease the number of lights and sirens?
So so basically it's going to be the risk factor on there. So every time that we turn on our lights and sirens, I mean, there is a risk to ourselves as well as to the general public. Now, all the medics go through emergency vehicle driver training every single year. We have cameras in the ambulances that have gyroscopes that get set off. If there's too much of an acceleration, a J-turn, a deceleration, if the medics get on their phone, which is against policy and illegal, if they get on their phone, then that alerts us that they don't have their seatbelt on. So we have all these things, and we use it more for education. We're not trying to get anyone in trouble, but we also know that, I mean, driving lights and sirens and navigating through traffic, it's dangerous. So there was a call 10 plus years ago in Oklahoma City at 10th and May where there was a medic who was driving 80 miles an hour down 10th Street and collided with someone and they killed him, and that paramedic went to jail. And so I don't ever want, that situation. So anything that we can do to decrease the risk, associated with responding to people, the better. And if we're able to feel more comfortable with the EMD dispatch, that's emergency medical dispatch, to where we say, you know what, I think that stub toe was probably really a stub toe. Do we need to scream through, town, for that? I would say no. I'd like to decrease the risk to not just, my medics and the ambulances, but also to the citizens who are driving through and not expecting that an ambulance is going to be coming through. So, does that answer your question, sir?
Absolutely.
Okay, good, thank you. And then destination, on here, Norman Regional Hospital is the #1 place that we take patients to. I also want everyone to know that we will take patients where they want to go. And that is a question that we get asked. It's like, you work for Norman Regional, does that mean that you have to take patients to Norman Regional? No, it does not. If somebody says, I'm established with a physician up at Heart North, let's go. Now, at the same time, if someone has a critical situation to where we feel like a closer, more appropriate facility is warranted, then we will have that conversation with them. So if we are at, Southwest 24th and Highway 9 and somebody is having a heart attack and they say, well, my cardiologist is up at Heart North, I'm going to say, well, we can take you up there, but I can't promise that you're going to get up there, that you're increasing the risk of you going into a lethal cardiac arrhythmia and dying on the way up there. However, we've got a cardiac cath lab. In fact, they're on the phone right now prepping for you as we speak. And so we consider time is muscle, just like with strokes, time is brain. And so if we can get you there sooner, and we'll get that corrected, and then if we need to get you up there later, let's do that. And I mean, nobody says no to that. They're like, yeah, give me to the closest place. So yeah, but we will take patients where they would like to go. Now, within reason, if somebody says, hey, you know what, I've established with my doctor at Parkland in Dallas, I'm like, so probably not. Okay, and then destination summary, that's just a percentage on here for things. We also have some other measurements that we have, so like out of shoot times, this is how long it takes from the moment that we are dispatch from a call until we go en route to the call. So we want to make sure that the medics are getting en route as quickly as possible. We try to keep this under a minute. And that's pretty consistent for things. And we have seen some deviations with this where, and sometimes this is like in the overnight hours, and it may take somebody a little bit longer to get in service because some of the medics have worked 24-hour shifts, which we're changing away from that. But when they have done that in the past, they may be asleep because we have stations, just like, say, the fire department. And so if that gets up a little too long, we can track this down to the individuals. And sometimes we found out there was a problem with the station tones going off overhead, so they weren't able to hear things. So it wasn't their fault, it was our fault. So, but that is something that we track. Another one of the things we track is the response times. How long is it taking us to get to a call? So this graph is for the last 180 days. And this shows the response time, the 911 response times in the city of Norman right here, and that is 8 minutes and 3 seconds, okay? Now, this stays pretty consistent, and this is all throughout Norman. So if you were to ask me, and I'm not able to break it down by ward, but if you needed it by zip code, I mean, that's information I can provide to you all. So I will tell you that if we're going out to 73026, then that's going to take us a little bit longer. That actually goes up to about 13 minutes, as you might expect. Okay, so, but the nice thing is that we've got Station 5, we've got Station 6 out there, and Norman Fire Department is ALS, so they're going to have paramedics on the fire engine. So the patient's still getting care. So in other words, we're not delaying the care, we're just delaying how long it's taking to transport, before we get there and stuff. So, but the nice thing is that if the firefighter paramedic has already started the IV, put them on the monitor and said, here's what's going on, everything, we grab them, we go. Scene time is so much shorter. And so we really appreciate our fire partners, both in Norman and in Moore, for being able to do those sort of things. Now, one thing I do want to point out to you all, and this is just some interesting information, and we go over this in our quality meeting, these are the transport times. So I was showing you how long it takes to get to a call on average. Now, how long does it take to transport somebody? Realize that when we're going to a call, we're going license irons. When we're transporting, 64% of the time, we're transporting without license sirens. So how long is it taking us to get to places? Well, the time range that I have on here, if you can see, is from the beginning of January of 24 until the end of July, of 24. The reason I picked that date range is because that is right before the Porter campus closed down. So basically up to this point, we had 2 hospitals in Norman that we could take patients to. We could take them to Norman Regional, Porter campus, or to the Helplex campus. After the Porter campus closed down, the majority of the patients that we transport are going to Norman Regional Hospital at Tecumseh and 36th. And so that has now extended our transport time. So if you look at this for 1336 before Porter closed, and then I take a look at the rest of the calendar year after that, now we're up to 1506. And so it's a little bit more than a minute. But I mean, if we need to go license irons, we will still do that. We do take patients to Norman Regional 9. We also have a facility in the city of Moore, so at 700 South Telephone Road, just north of the Warren Theater. And we will transport patients up there. However, if we see a patient that we feel is most likely going to get admitted, in other words, they'll probably need to go to the ICU or be seen overnight, we're most likely going to transport them to Norman Regional Hospital or their destination of choice. Because if we take them to our facility in Moore or to Norman Regional 9, then we're going to have to go pick them up later. And so what we're doing is we're saving them and us an extra transport. Okay. We also take a look at how long it's taking to offload a patient at each of the facilities. And I know maybe some of that's kind of hard to see, but basically that's from the moment we arrive at an emergency department and then before we get back in service. And different hospitals have different turnaround times for that, or what we would call patient offload times. And so Integris Baptist in the month of August was, the highest up here. So it was taking, around like 12 or so minutes, from the moment they arrived at the facility until they handed the patient off. Norman Regional Hospital is down here at 4th at about 8 minutes. So I mean that's a decent turnaround time. The city hospitals, it just kind of depends. I mean, they all get busy like everybody else gets busy. So what we try to avoid is what we call wall time or bed delay, where you show up to an emergency department and say, hey, I have a person, we need a room, and they go, we're full, you're gonna have to wait. And so what ends up happening is that the ambulance and patient wait with the patient on the cot against a wall. And they wait there with them until a bed becomes available. Right now, nobody's waiting anywhere. Here in about a month or two, it's going to get a lot busier because it's going to be sick respiratory season. More people are coming into the emergency department, more people getting admitted to the hospital, and they're staying longer times. So a lot of people don't realize that the fuller a hospital is, that impacts 911 responses, but we also try to staff accordingly.
Is this kind of like a plug for getting your vaccinations?
Flu shots.
Yes, I will go along with that. So yes, absolutely get your vaccinations. So all of them. And that's just offload time just for the Norman Regional facilities. But they have very quick turnaround times. So, and that's just the percentage of time on here. So 80% of the time we're getting a patient turned over in under 10 minutes, and that's perfectly fine. So just some quality metrics also that we follow that we're very proud of are STEMI metrics, and that's an acronym standing for ST elevation myocardial infarction, and that's a fancy way of saying heart attack. Okay, so we are, I'll show the award here in just a little bit, but we're very proud of the amount of times that we're able to get patients to a cardiac catheterization lab very quickly. We're measured by the American Heart Association, and so we get awards, from them, or recognition, for the fast turnaround times we have. I'm just going to skip down to this little thing. So we have the American Heart Association Mission Lifeline Gold with Honor Roll, which is the first time you're seeing that sort of award, but I will tell you that we're the only EMS service in the state of Oklahoma that has this, and we get it every single year. And this is also another benefit of being a hospital-based EMS service is that, we work with our hospital, and this isn't a dig at any other service or IMSA or anybody, it's just they got to work with everybody, and that can be challenging. So we work with Norman Regional, and we're getting patients into our cardiac cath lab so much faster. So all of our heart attack metrics, on here look really, really good. So the STEMI alert or the heart attack alert, what that means is that 100% of the time we recognize that somebody is having a heart attack. We can see that with our cardiac monitor. We call the hospital immediately and we say they're having a heart attack. And then if it's 2 in the afternoon, they will clear a table, for a cardiologist to get ready for the patient. If it's 2 in the morning, they're paging that person out. So they're not waiting until we get to the hospital and then the team gets paged out. And that's another reason why, somebody's having chest pain, call 911. I mean, for people who think, well, I think it'll just be faster, like if I drive them in. You may physically get there faster, but we're going to get to you sooner. We're going to start treatment care, and then we're also going to get all the systems paged in place that you need to have done. The other thing is that, and we've seen this several times, and it's unfortunate, is that, somebody's having, a heart attack. The wife throws the husband, into the car and it starts, driving very quickly to the emergency department, and then something happens. She's driving or he's driving, and then they get into a wreck, or worse is that the patient goes into a lethal arrhythmia and they go into cardiac arrest. And then they have to pull over and call 911. Whereas if they'd called us early, we could have gotten to them sooner, seen them on our monitor, given medications, given electricity if we need to. So chest pain equals call 911. And then our stroke metrics as well, we're very proud of the care that we deliver to our stroke patients. Very similar sort of thing. We look at our scene time and what percent of that time is under 20 minutes, 14 minutes. I mean, that's very quick to get in there and recognize that someone is having stroke-like symptoms. And if they're having what I would call a more severe stroke, then we will take them, instead of Norman Regional, we will take them up to OU. OU can do a few more things that Norman Regional cannot. And part of that has to do with doing clot retrieval. If they have an ischemic stroke where it's a clot in there, they can actually go in and grab that clot and pull that out. We're not there just yet. We will give like a medication that will go in and break it away. It's called a thrombolytic. But the medics can recognize the difference in the field through the training that we give them on this type of stroke goes here and that type of stroke goes there. So very proud of our stroke metrics. Let's see, and then trauma metrics, the same sort of thing. In the past, one of the things that we would do for a trauma patient is that we would do everything that we could on the scene as much as we could. We'd start the IVs, get them on the monitor and everything. But what literature has shown time and time again is that the best thing that we can do is get them to the hospital. We can try to start the IV en route because they have what's called this golden hour, which is after a traumatic event. If the person gets to the surgery within an hour, I mean, that's like that golden hour window. So starting the IV on them, we're going to do it, but we need to get out of there pretty quickly. So that's where our fire departments are very helpful in extricating, patients, who are, stuck into a car and stuff, because while they're in there, I mean, they're not, in surgery and stuff. And the majority of the level 1 trauma patients need to be in surgery, and they need to be in there very quickly. So there isn't anything I can do to fix them. There isn't anything that the emergency department can do to fix them. They need to be, in surgery. And if it's and depending on where it is in Norman, if it's at, if it occurs at Tecumseh I-35, we're going to grab them and just head north. If it's occurring at 120th and Cedar Lane, or Etowah, then most likely based off of the mechanism, how it gets called in, the mechanism of injury, we will probably call for a helicopter while we're there. So, or before we even get there, because we're like, that head-on collision at 120th and Highway 9, I know someone's going to the trauma center, and it's going to take us, that 13 minutes to get out there to them and everything. So in that situation, I'm just going to say, call a helicopter. And if we don't need them, we'll tell them to go away. But if we do need them, thank God they're there, because then they can get to that patient to OU even faster. And then the last thing I'll show you on here is just our intubation metrics, and that's the breathing tube I was talking about. So that's just another thing that we measure. That is considered a higher risk, procedure. So if someone is not breathing in the field, or if they're having difficulty breathing, just like a patient getting prepped for surgery where they are paralyzed and they're made to go unconscious and they put a breathing tube in you, they're doing that under mostly a controlled setting where, the person hasn't eaten for 24 hours. We're going on whatever, is there and stuff. So it's a very risky procedure, but the medics are trained in that and we follow that metric. So we do that really, really well. The only other thing I will say is that another one of the points that Daryl had mentioned in the email had to do with the subscription service. I know citizens have had questions about that, and they also have in the city of Moore. We at this time, we do not offer a subscription service. IMSA does that, and it's about like $350, $365 like a month, and that's put on the water bill. Wadley's does that. They're out of Purcell, and they do the southern portion of Goldsby, and they do $10, on the water bill. And everybody has a little bit different. I mean, IMSS is lower because they have so many water meters, right? Basically, the way that works is that the citizen is billed for that, and then, at the end of the month, and the city, pays the ambulance service for that. And then if someone who lives in that residence had to call 911 within that service area, then, and they can, prove, hey, I live at this place, and, we opted into this program, then, the insurance still gets billed, but if there's anything left over for a patient bill, then that gets wiped. So if it meets certain criteria, that's how others operate. So in other words, if you call for that stub toe and insurance is denying it completely, that may get denied also, and then you have to pay the full amount. So we have not done that. Part of it is that there was a ruling back in the early 2000s from the Office of the Inspector General that said that hospital-based EMS services cannot do this, but I think that has since changed. So I mean that is an option. If there is enough interest in that, if we were to do something like that, we would want to do it in both Norman and in Moore and Goldsby, to a certain extent. We're not sure what that would look like and stuff. So, but I know that there has been interest in that.
Yeah, because my question would be for people who are not on city services, like trash and water, then how would they opt in?
I think that would be something that we would work out, with the city, however you all would like. So, I would, get with, I'd say finance and legal and just say, all right, what makes sense for this? Would that require a vote, since it is on the utility bill? But if it's citizens saying, I want to opt into that, I'm not sure how that would work exactly, but that's something that we could explore.
Councilmember Nova?
A little bit to that. My brothers actually use that in Oklahoma City, and that's why I was the one that originally started bringing that question up.
Oh, yeah.
And he told me that if you don't have, say you're renting somewhere and you don't have a utility bill per se, then you could just pay into the city whatever the yearly fee would end up being.
Yeah, absolutely correct. So that, again, that is not something, we have explored in the past, but I've been getting more questions about that, and that is definitely something that, we can absolutely look into.
So maybe even a higher elevation view, what is MSTAT's budget, the cost of operations for the current fiscal year? What is your budget?
I'm at about 9 million.
And how much revenue does MSTAT bring in?
I'm probably closer to a little higher than that.
Okay,
So in other words, we make money and push money back into the health system.
okay. We have
Yes.
the capabilities in our Tyler technology. Thank goodness we started that upgrade a handful of years ago. We are capable. With my conversation with Kyle about that, maybe a legal thing now with a hospital-based ambulance service. If there is consensus of the council, you would like us to explore that, we'd be happy to do that and bring you back those findings. And we would invite Mr. Hurley to sit down and join us in that conversation to see if what is required for us to be able to proceed. Would it require a vote of the people? I kind of agree. This is not a utility service. It's just a billing mechanism, and you don't have to include that in your payment. So I think we can get there, and we'd be happy to do that homework assignment on behalf of the council.
I would just ask, because we do have the same employer and everything. Also, is that something you feel like the health system right now would be open to looking into, at least about what that would look like?
Short answer, yes. So, I think that, because this would be a different revenue source for us. And so in my mind, and the way other services use it, so I'll give McLean Grady EMS, which is out of Blanchard and Newcastle. So they're what's called a 522 district, and they get ad valorem, but that's by school district. So the way their budget works is, it would probably be similar to like how this would work if we were to go to this, is that our operational costs are paid, for by our billing patients. And so that's taking care of the majority of that. If we were to go something like this, then this would probably be more for capital needs, than anything else, because Norman Regional does have a capital budget. And so if we were doing things like we're needing new ambulances, we're needing, those large ticket items, then we, just like all your city departments, compete for the same capital money. If we were to have a different revenue source, for that, now, the downside to that, well, I shouldn't say the downside, but, one of the things that I would have to look at is that we do get certain patient revenue, from citizens. And if we're saying, hey, you know what, we're going to wipe that because it's going to be part of a subscription program, I need to, figure out, what that
rate would need to be.
revenue offset is. So, because it's one of those where, my preference would be to sign everybody up and have them opt out as opposed to have everybody opt in, so that it would make, financial sense for us. But yeah, as far as this being like a different, revenue source, for our capital specifically, I think that would be really good. That would be helpful, especially if we're talking about doing a sort of joint venture with Norman on, say, like future stations, and stuff, or any other joint projects, that we're looking into, so.
Okay, I thought I saw Councilmember Nofar have their hand raised.
Wouldn't.
Oh,
And generically speaking, we send out about 44,000 utility bills a month. So how many, what percentage would opt in?
And then you also, I guess this would also have to be something that went to more city council. That's a possibility for them to opt in also, right?
Yes,
If we was to, do
Yes.
something here,
yes.
we'd try to replicate it at more with their city council also.
And I've had conversations, Daryl, with your counterpart, Brooks Mitchell up there, about the very specific thing, because he's had inquiries, as well, so.
okay. I'm interested in exploring, Councilmember Bruce.
It covers the delta from what their insurance doesn't pay the ride. So I guess your ride's about $750, $800 a ride.
It's a little bit higher, so we start ours probably about 1,200, and then it ramps up to about 1,800. So, but as far as but we also have contracts with each of the major payers and stuff. So, whatever, whatever the arrangement is in there. So even if it's for, say, $1,400, but, Blue Cross says we're only gonna pay $500, then, we deduct all that. And so more times than not, there's very little things out there that, the patient has to pay for.
You have, 9,000 rides a year, somewhere around there?
We have 33,000 trips that we do every single year. As far as transports, it's probably closer to 21,000.
Okay. And then one more time, it's the delta, right? Covering the delta. So if someone doesn't have any insurance, what happens then?
So then we would have to come up, if we're talking about a subscription service, we would have to come up what that looks like and stuff. So because we already have that right now. We have a whole bunch of, we would call self-insured or no pays and stuff. And so, the hospital has a charitable and a bad debt policy, that relates to that. So I'm sure it would apply to that somehow. But since we haven't explored it, I couldn't tell you, what we would do with that. But we would come up with something, yes.
Any other questions? Any other thoughts about exploring? Do we have consensus to? Okay. Well, I guess then we just get back to staff at another committee meeting to figure out the finer points.
Absolutely.
Okay. We need to bring it through finance or whatever on that.
We will move expeditiously
your
and
time,
take
Kyle.
advantage.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
Kyle.
much.
All right.
How many rescue divers do you guys have?
One,
Just
me.
one?
Just me.
We got one for the pond.
Yeah, one for the pond, right, exactly. Okay, thank you all.
Save the lawn mowing guys every time they tip a mower in it. Oh, yeah.
All right, so now we're
Almost
gonna
had
move on
trophy.
to a presentation and discussion regarding the use of portable restrooms in city parks. And I'd like to recognize Jason Olson to present.
Perfect. I have I think we have Ben from, if he's still on, Ben from, if I can figure out how to use this too, but Ben from Thrones, he is, we had a conversation and we've talked about it with him several times. He has this, what we think is kind of a unique perspective and solution to some of the things that y'all been asking for. So I'll turn this over to Ben and let him hop into his presentation.
Thanks, Jason. Hi, everyone. My name is Ben Simons. I'm based out in Seattle. And as Jason mentioned, I work with a company called Throne Labs. We manufacture, install, and service public restrooms across the country. Currently, we are in the DC area, Ann Arbor, Michigan, Bay Area of California, and LA County. So very broadly, Throne's a very mission-driven company. We're on a mission to expand access to clean and delightful restrooms. We believe that's a very important human right. So our goal is to build a restroom that not only everyone is able to use, but also one that will actually be pleasant to use and enjoyable to use because it's clean and well maintained. We have built restrooms everywhere from Beverly Hills, so places where there's really, really high standards for what a restroom should look like, all the way to like downtown LA, near large homeless encampments. So really that goal is to create a delightful restroom experience, but one that is also robust enough and uses some technology that we'll walk through today to make sure that even when it is treated roughly by folks, one, it can get clean quickly, but also we can add some accountability to the restroom experience. So because this is a really, really unique product, I'm actually going to start by playing a really quick video that I'm just going to talk over. It's about 20 seconds, and it'll just give you an idea of what these actually look like. And then we can talk about a couple of the really specific things that are important to how drones are used and why they're so successful across the country. So should play here. Did not play. Okay, cool. So typically people are going to use their phone to enter a throne. They're going to scan a QR code. The door is going to open. It is completely touchless, which is really important. It does have running water for a toilet and a sink. It has ventilation. It has heat. But really importantly is it can be dropped off with a forklift and activated within a couple of hours. So there are no utility connections for water and sewer required for a throne. Also very importantly is that, as you can see, everyone looks pretty happy in this video. We're constantly asking our users for feedback on how the throne looks. Is it clean? Is there any damage? Is there anything that needs to happen to make sure that it is usable? So they are able to communicate with us. And what's also really important is we're actually able to communicate with our users as well. So here on the left side is pretty standard features and benefits that you're going to see in any public restroom worth its salt that Throne also has. You're going to have your running water sink and toilet, as we discussed, climate control, ventilation. We provide all the cleaning and all supplies. What's going to make Throne really unique comes back to that that communication and accountability piece that we just discussed. So when you enter a Throne, as shown in the video, you're going to scan a QR code. It's going to auto-populate a text message on your phone. When you hit send on that text message, the door is going to slide open. The first thing you're going to hear when you walk in is a voice in English and then a voice in Spanish telling you that you have a 10-minute time limit to use that restroom. At that 10-minute time, the lights are going to start flashing and a voice is going to start playing. At 10 minutes and 20 seconds, that door is actually just going to slide right open. There are warnings at 5 and 8 minutes to make sure that no one, absolutely no one, is surprised by this. And it's also written on the walls all over the throne. But this is really important for a couple reasons. One of which is actually, like, if there's a health emergency inside of a throne, there is no chance that person's just going to get locked in there until someone realizes and then the police come. But two, it stops people from loitering. It stops people from camping. So that's one thing that's going to happen. Another thing that's going to happen is you're going to get a text message on your phone and it's going to say, hey, from a scale of 1 to 5, how clean is this restroom? Are there any issues? Are there any pictures that need to be taken to show us what's going on? So they can communicate with us. But if a user does decide to go past that 10-minute time limit, or maybe they're smoking inside a unit, that communication goes both ways. So we can actually text them and say, hey, you're misusing this throne. If you continue to do so, we're going to restrict your access. So again, thinking about accountability, not only for the sake of accountability, but also because of deterring. We want this restroom to be usable for everyone because everyone wants to use the restroom. So this is a case study from one of our roughest sites. It's in downtown LA in Westlake MacArthur Park. 5.6% of users actually did reach that 10-minute limit. However, only 0.7% of users end up having repeat offenses. So what does this tell us? It tells us that, yeah, we have, a good 5.5% of the public in this location that are going to misuse a restroom. But when we tell them that, hey, if you continue to do this, we're going to not let you into this nice, clean restroom anymore, their behavior does change very dramatically. So as you can see, after 1 minute, actually 33% of users are, 67% of users are gone after 1 minute, going all the way to actually 5 minutes over, where you have about 5% of users, as I mentioned, that are staying in there. If they do not leave after a certain amount of time, we can come out to check on that individual. If it's like an actual situation that we cannot deal with, we typically, in this scenario, our partner is LA Metro, just call Metro Security. You can also call the police, depends on the partner. But point is that this kind of loitering prevention and accountability tech leads to really strong outcomes around things like loitering, smoking, and misuse in general. So not only thinking about software tech like that, but also just typical general anti-vandalism design. Our wraps, interior and exterior, are all graffiti resistant. Regardless, if a throne does get tagged, we do remove that. It's not on you. Our interior wallpaper is very purposeful. People don't tend to tag surfaces like this. There's just too many colors. If someone does etch it, we'll just paste a new leaf right on top of that etching really quickly. So again, thinking about that like broken window theory, we keep a restroom really clean. People are more likely to keep it clean. We also have a quick peel mirror. So if anyone etches into that mirror, we can just peel off a mirror, no problem. And then broadly, our kind of modular design means that pretty much all repairs can just be done on site. All repairs are done by our techs. So again, if someone vandalizes a throne, that doesn't cost the city any extra money. That's part of our service plan, and our techs fix that. To give you an idea of how successful we are at keeping thrones available, average uptime across all of our 85 thrones across the nation is about 95%. So 5% of the time, thrones are either being cleaned or there's some issue that requires us to shut it down. For instance, in this case, a user texted us and said, hey, there's defecation all over the urinal. For us, that's a health hazard. Our 24/7 remote monitoring team is going to shut down the unit, set a task for a cleaner to come out on an immediate basis, and then they're going to get that unit cleaned up and then get it reopened as soon as possible. So we're relying on these messages, not only the text and video, but also an actual clean score that they give us to calculate what we call clean risk. What are the chances that a throne is dirty? So we're using that score. We're also using the number of uses since the last clean, the number of uses since a last review, and the overall volume of usage. What this all means, to put it simply, is that for the most part, thrones get cleaned on average every 15 uses. In the world we live in today, that's just how frequently bathrooms have to get cleaned to keep them at a 4.3 out of 5 average cleanliness rating. So that's that number that we are striving to hit across all of our markets. Out of 5, our users have given us an average of 4.3 for how clean a restroom is, which again, working in tough areas like downtown LA and also areas with a really high expectation like Beverly Hills is pretty unheard of. Other things that you would expect to see out of a throne, we do community surveys, 91% of people typically say that thrones are either good or great options for restrooms. And then we also see just impacts on the community as a whole. In downtown Santa Monica, we actually saw a 70% decrease in public defecation. In LA in general, they've typically seen a 50% decrease in public defecation. So you give someone access to a clean restroom, they're going to use it. A couple case studies here. I'm not going to bore you guys with a ton of numbers right now, but I'll send over this deck after our call. But basically, this details that defecation count here. LA and LA Metro actually does count how many number 2s they're picking up off their street. So they have really solid numbers off of this. LA Metro has, at this point, we've served more than 250,000 uses across the country. We're at more than 1 million uses at this point. So as I mentioned, no hookups for water and sewer. For your climate, we would likely need a power connection, just 120 volt, just because it gets pretty cold in the wintertime. Wouldn't be any issue in the summertime whatsoever. And the question that everyone probably wants to know is, well, how much does this cost us per unit? Very reasonable question. So our pricing structure works in a pretty unique way. When we're entering a new market, we'll charge a deposit typically to enter a new market that will then be taken out of the monthly invoices as it goes. But when we're just installing a new throne in an existing market, there's no upfront cost whatsoever to do that installation. We just charge an annual cost that's billed monthly for the throne itself, all the servicing, and all the installation, and all the servicing. Based on the location, we're going to select a service tier for that unit specifically. So So a hub throne is going to get cleaned on average 2 to 3 times per day. On a busy Saturday, a lot of usage, that clean risk is going to go up pretty quickly. So we're going to be cleaning it probably 10 times that day. On a rainy Tuesday, we might clean it once. So this includes everything you would need for the year for that throne. Something really important to know, just as we are not currently in the kind of Norman, Oklahoma City market. I've talked to Jason about this a few months ago, but kind of things changing on our end a little bit. We're at this point a minimum deployment of minimum 15, more likely 20 units to actually enter a market, with the expected runway after a year or two to get up to about 25, 30 units across the metro area, which is typically we consider within about a 45-minute drive of our headquarters. So just thinking numbers, those are the kind of numbers that we need to see to actually enter a market to provide a cost-effective service model. Okay, so that's my spiel. Figure we get it all out in the open, and I'm assuming people have a lot of questions, so I'm happy to pause now and have more of an open conversation.
Got questions? Councilmember Bruce?
So what's the smallest community you're in?
Probably the smallest area we're in is Detroit. Ann Arbor, Detroit region is our smallest market right now.
Councilmember Hinkle?
For the staff that cleans the toilets and stuff, I don't know if I missed it, but where do they come from? Are they hired locally? Is that something that you guys already have a footprint in this market regarding, or would that be something that you're building as you come into the market still?
Yeah, so we're building that from scratch as we enter a new market. So that's one of the reasons that we have that pretty high minimum quantity of units to start it to enter into a new market, because we have to have cleaners and techs that are trained up specifically on a throne, right? It's not like going into a porta potty and power washing it. These are really high-tech restrooms. They do require trained techs and coordination with the remote monitoring team. So it's something that we hire locally to do all that work.
And how many local techs for a rollout do you hire typically?
Depends on the number and depends on the kind of how dense the deployment is. Right now in the Bay Area of California, where we have 22 units or so deployed, I think we have 2 or 3 techs, and then quite a few more cleaners than that.
Great. Councilmember No Fire?
So what's the lowest number of units that you would scale out or roll out?
Yeah, so the absolute lowest we'd start with is probably 15, but to be honest, that number is just going up pretty frequently because we have so much interest. So next year, we're just about to solidify deployments into San Diego and Seattle. So that lowest number is 15 to 20, and then again, we would need to have like the runway to be able to increase that to 25 or 30 over the year or so after that first deployment, to really be able to scale that for us.
Councilmember No Fire?
Would this be scalable for special occasions, or is that's a set number for the year?
Yeah, it's a 12-month contract.
Any other questions?
I'm good.
Councilmember Gainsbury?
Yeah, if we was able to get other municipalities involved in the rollout, could that help bring down our initial cost investment by getting others local within that 40-mile radius?
Yeah, definitely. Typically, the way that we'll enter a new market is we start with kind of what we call like our flagship customer, I guess, which is actually doing a vast majority of that minimum quantity. So in the case of Seattle, our flagship customer is actually the city of Seattle, but we're also working with the transit agency. We're also working with, the county just south of Seattle to add a couple to that. So in your instance, in your case, it wouldn't be rare for like Oklahoma City to be a flagship customer that's going to move forward 10 or 15. And then you guys are within their service area, so we would be able to do a lower quantity in Norman.
Well, if there are no other questions, then I guess this is, if Ben wants to stick around, he can, but he doesn't have to.
Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, of course. Thanks everyone for taking the time. Thank you for your questions, and I'm happy to hop on and answer more whenever. So just let me know if we can help.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
With the Olympics coming to Oklahoma City.
I just would like to add that since the last oversight meeting, or whenever we talked about Throne last time, I've been in contact with COC MHC, and they would be interested in also hosting one because they recognize their clients, even if they're closed, also deserve the right to use a bathroom. But I feel like there would still be more work to get others to sign on. So, and then Councilmember Hinkle, you had
I
your
was
hand
just
raised.
gonna ask if, has Oklahoma City expressed any interest in this, or?
So we sent it to Daryl, and Daryl sent it out to city
Yeah,
manager.
I've tried to send that out to all the city managers. We meet monthly at the ACOG office in Oklahoma City. And it'll be we're all on the same fiscal year, and it'll be one of those conversations where they build it into the 26-27 fiscal year budget as part of a new program. It's a level of service unlike anything we could match. There's no way we could service a restroom 3 or 4 times a day. Special events, we got more bodies, more hands on deck to keep the facilities fully stocked. But this is an incredible mousetrap with data analytics and metrics and safeguards built right into it. I don't see our budget capable of absorbing 15, but the goal is to develop that market in the metro, and then council has the opportunity to identify those most heavily trafficked areas where this makes sense. So we're going to keep pushing until the market makes itself available to us.
And we do get to move them once a quarter
Yeah,
as a part of the contract.
yeah, you get to move once a quarter. They also will work with your local agencies to deal with homeless, and they'll give them, if they don't have phones, they'll basically give them a business card with their own unique QR code. And when you start talking about when we start talking about parks and restrooms like that, I mean, we could probably put together some math, and you start talking about the capital costs and then the ongoing cost of us having to service those restrooms and the supplies in the restroom. I would think that this might, if you start talking over a 4 or 5 year period, it might be pretty close.
Especially when they include all the maintenance, all the upkeep inside when somebody does try to destroy it or something like that. That's all on them to replace rather than our maintenance guys going out there.
So a long-term period, of course, a permanent restroom is probably gonna be cheaper on a long-term period, but we're trying to get one out of Reeves, and when we had it designed and then a cost estimation of it, it was $400,000, and the last one what we built at Griffin was well over $300,000, and these are just small bathrooms. You have to run plumbing, electricity, and we have to hit commercial standards, ADA standards. It gets expensive.
Councilmember Hinkle?
That was my other question I meant to ask Ben, but if there's no plumbing or anything that goes to them, do they just come empty them out like an RV?
Yeah. So that they pump the fresh water in there and they take the waste with them.
So direction from us is please go find people in the market and I guess figure out what that might look like in our budget for next year if we can get momentum.
And council members, in your duties, when you bump into your counterparts in some of our neighboring agencies, to continue to push that button and ask them if they have been made aware of this. Because, I mean, even a small agency, if you had one in a central park kind of location with this super high level of service, heated and cooled. I mean, we don't have one with air conditioning. That's really not a thing in anything we built. It will be a little shocking first time you go in there and it talks to you. That may.
Well, or when you're sitting there and the door just opens.
So for OU, are you also speaking to them?
I have not yet, but I was telling Councilmember Grant, the level of service that kids in the dorm, their restrooms don't get cleaned like that. That's a whole new level of service. And you think about the expanse of their campus and other properties that they own, not just right here at OU Central, that they may have applications. So Brian Holder-Reed is their facilities guy, and I'll be sharing it with them. The presentation, they've given us permission to share that.
And I would be interested, like in a peer city, like we compare ourselves to Ann Arbor all the time. I'd be interested to see where they have theirs placed.
Well, now we have new relationships with our friends in Ann Arbor since we had to slap them around on the football field a little bit. But Mr. Milton Duhoney is their city manager, and I'll give him a call and ask him how it's going and where his core is.
Another question for the company itself, you know, if you're thinking about going on to an OU or whatever in Oklahoma City, around the stadium for the Thunder or anything like that, is there any way that they can change the outside with
Yeah,
a
they
wrap?
had,
Can
that
you
was
put-
one of their options.
Can you
They
put
had
a custom wrap on there where at OU it just blends in more, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
that was one of their options. You can,
$500, that's what it
Yeah.
said.
Go away green.
and too, OU could theoretically, after football season, move it somewhere else. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, if there are no more questions or
Well, I just
directions.
would be remiss if I didn't say I trust you guys to flesh out the solution on this.